Good morning. I'm Jen Sheffer. I'm the Instructional Technology Specialist at Burlington High School in Burlington, Massachusetts, and this is Help Desk Live, episode 11. And joining me today is somebody that probably everybody is familiar with, unless you've been living under a rock for the past couple of years. But I'm really excited to have Richard Byrne here as my guest. Author of the award-winning blog Free Technology Tools for Teachers. And we're just going to be discussing a few of the hot topics that we've been reading about in the Twitter sphere and on various blogs throughout the country. So the first topic I'd like to talk about is student blogging. And as a professional blogger, former classroom teacher, and someone who's made the leap from the classroom into the professional field of blogging, why do you think it's important for students to be blogging, and what advice would you give to an educator who is looking to go in that same direction?
So the biggest thing about blogging that people should take note of is that blogging is really an exercise in reflection. It's an exercise in thinking. I tend to think about blog posts all the time. I tend to think of things as blog posts. I kind of experience life as a blog post now, and maybe that's because I obsess a little bit about it. But but I think that is really an important thing for teachers to take note of. Is that the process of blogging is really a process of thinking and reflecting, which is something we should be asking students to do anyway. But by blogging, we're putting our thoughts out there. Students are putting their thoughts out there for other students to benefit from. One of the things that I always do with my students is I would ask them on Friday afternoons to take just a few minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour-long exercise. It can be a 10, 15-minute exercise. What did you learn this week? What things did you struggle with this week? What's your question moving forward? And then I asked all my students to comment on at least one other student's blog post sometime between that Friday and the coming Friday. That way they were interacting with each other, and they are really tapping into the collective knowledge that everybody has. And it's a great way for me to see what they're doing, and a great way for them to really get that reflection piece down. The other thing about blogging that we often think about is that blogging is just a writing exercise. And I really like to emphasize that blogging is not just a writing exercise. And in fact, it doesn't even have to be a writing exercise. I'm so focused on getting students to share their thoughts and share their ideas that I don't really care a whole lot about what the writing looks like. I'm more interested in, do they get their ideas out there? And some of the ways we can do that is just to do a quick audio recording. Use a tool like SoundCloud and put that audio recording in the blog instead of forcing the student to do all the writing. Because a lot of times we have students who have great ideas, but they struggle with their writing piece. Well, we'll work on the writing piece in our language arts class. We'll work on the writing piece in our social studies class. But for that exercise of reflection, I just want them to get their ideas out there. So, we can do an audio recording, we do a video recording, and just quickly say, Mr. Byrne, this is what I learned this week. Here's my question moving forward. And we can still comment on that video post just like we could a written post.
I could not agree with you more. The reflection piece, like you said, yesterday my students did a Google Hangout with Paige Woodard. She's a senior at Franklin Community High School and in Indiana, and she's been nominated for a BAMI in the Student Voice category. So she gave my students advice on how they can start to use social media tools in a professional way to leverage themselves and network and meet other professionals in the industry that they are passionate about. And that's exactly what we started today's class with. And it's written on the board. What did you learn from Paige yesterday? Write a blog post about what you learned and how that can help you as you continue, hopefully, blogging. And I'm right there with you on the whole, it's not just about writing. Yes, we would love to have, perfect grammar and sentence structure, but like you said, that's just, if that's your goal, good luck. I mean, I don't really focus on that either, and I think it allows you to also reach all different types of learners, and allowing them to do those audio recordings or the video recordings. You're reaching your introverted students, your extroverted students, and giving a lot of choice. So those are great suggestions, and I think a lot of people do focus on they have to write, but not always. And especially if you're in a one-to-one environment with an iPad like we are, students have tons of choices on how they can format those posts. So I live my life as a blog post too, and I have about 25 drafts waiting to publish. I don't know if they'll ever
publish them.
I'm trying to get down to the Seth Godin or the Chris Brogan, short and sweet. But once I get going, I kind of ramble.
Well, I can give you a tip about that.
Please.
So two things about blogging that students should be aware of, that adults should be aware of, is that 500 words is about the longest anyone's going to read in a blog post, unless you're really sitting down and saying, I'm going to spend the rest of my day reading blog posts. We don't tend to read more than 500 words. So, and I found myself yesterday writing a blog post for one of my other blogs. I have 4 or 5 blogs I'm working on at any given time, and I got to that 500 word mark, and I thought, I still have a whole nother idea I want to include in this blog post. So I just said, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to wrap it up here, and the next blog post is going to be a continuation of that. And I really think that's one of the things that kids get hung up on, adults get hung up on, is we've got to get every single idea out right now for the whole world to see, and that's not true. The whole world doesn't want all of your brain dump at once. They want part of your brain dump at once, and just publish it.
Right.
And I'm great for leaving out important words in a sentence like the or of.
Who needs those?
Yeah, you get the idea.
Yeah.
It's that just ship it out mentality. Just get it out there. You can always go back and edit. I left out of in the title of my blog post. All right, go back and put it in. But at least get it out there, and get in the habit of getting it out there. If it's every Friday you're going to write, get your post out there every Friday. Or have some things queued up ahead of time. If you know that you have a whole bunch of ideas, and you're that person who has, Saturday morning is my quiet time at home, and I'm going to write for 3 hours. Well, you don't need to publish 3 hours with a blog post that morning. You can space them out for the next month or whatever you want to do. So. Right.
Great advice. I know. I have after the Boston Marathon, I was thinking a lot about, I trained for a half marathon, so I have a post in draft form about how tech integration is kind of like a marathon training for something like that, except there's no finish line. And my tech director here, Dennis Volano, we had a meeting earlier this week with a new ed tech startup, and Dennis actually said that line that I had been thinking of. We talked about how we've been integrating technology. He said, but there's no finish line. And I'm thinking, okay, that's a sign. I have to get that post published. So, so great advice, great tips. And again, I love the whole idea of, it's great to strive for perfection, but I mean, I've seen some of the most well-known bloggers out there that do exactly what you said. They leave out a couple words here and there, but we get the point. Message is loud and clear. Taking a little shift, sort of connected to blogging, I think, is another hot topic in a area that I'm really passionate about, and that's digital citizenship. I co-moderate the digital citizenship Twitter chats every second and fourth Wednesday of the month. We have one coming up next week. And I just wanted your perspective on that and its role in the K-12 setting, and what your thoughts are on that, and what advice would you give to educators, administrators, parents, students about the topic of digital citizenship?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is you can't start early enough. you can start in pre-kindergarten. I always tell the story that my niece, who's almost 4 years old now, has been Skyping by herself for the last 14 or 15 months because she's figured out if she gets her mother's iPad and sees the Skype icon, she knows that she can tap that icon and tap my face, and she can Skype with me. So, she's not in school yet. She's in preschool, and so my sister has already had those conversations with her about you don't tap on faces that you don't recognize, right? So you can't start early enough. That's the first thing. The second thing is we need to balance the walled garden approach. We're going to lock everybody out with the reality of if they're going to have access to the whole world very soon. We see elementary school kids that have cell phones, right? And if we're saying, no, you can't use the cell phone except for calling mom at the end of the school day, we're kind of doing a little bit of a disservice by saying, no, we're just going to ignore that the rest of the world is out there. We're going to ignore that the student can accidentally call somebody, or the student can accidentally get on some app or social network. So we can't start early enough with that. Here are the guidelines. Here's the safety protocols. It's that that stranger danger that you and I went through when we were elementary school kids, right? That whole you don't talk to the car that slows down next to you on your walk home from school.
Right.
That same concept, but we really can't start early enough. I think we do a disservice when we say to particularly middle school students and high school students, no, you can't share outside of the school domain, or you can't put your blog post out for the whole world to see, or you can't publish on YouTube. We do a huge disservice because we're limiting our students' exposure to great opportunities, but we're also limiting we're limiting their opportunity to learn, and we're limiting our opportunities to teach. So I'm not a big fan of the walled garden approach to filtering, and one of the things that I've shared for years is I went to give a presentation with some of my students at another school one time, and it was the site we wanted to get to was blocked, and I'm just kind of stalling for time, trying to tell the kids it's going to be okay, we'll figure it out. Well, one of my students had already figured out how to get past that school's filter.
Nice.
It took her probably 5 minutes, and it probably took her about 3 minutes to wonder, should I tell Mr. Byrne that I know how to get past this school's filter? So when it comes to digital citizenship, just start early. Be realistic about it. Be realistic about the fact that your school has a no cell phones policy. Guess what? Your kids are going on their cell phones because they don't have to go to the bathroom every half hour.
Exactly.
Or I see schools say things like, we're not going to allow any kind of blogging, or we're not going to allow use of, one of my favorites is, we're not going to allow use of Wikipedia. Well, guess what? The kids are still going to do all that stuff. So we can ignore it, or we can teach how to use it effectively.
Agreed, 100%. I think a school will, like Burlington, our approach is, we want students to have access to these tools, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, blogging, LinkedIn. I work with a lot of seniors and juniors, and I'm really starting to encourage them to develop their professional profiles on LinkedIn. And our approach is that if they're using these tools and they've been taught how to use them appropriately, they get Google searched by college admission representatives, future employers. We want those folks to be impressed with what they find on our applicants. And I start out the beginning of the semester with the creeper assignment. So I have, it's a lot of fun. The students don't know me, and I say, I want you to Google search me for homework tonight, find out as much as you can about me. The next day they come in, they write everything that they found out about me on the board, and then we have a discussion about, what types of information did they find and who put that information there. And it's me. I put it there. None of it is personal for the most part. They find out very few personal details. They find out that I'm a fitness instructor, but they don't know things about my family. And so we have a discussion about, we have total control over the types of information that we share and what is and isn't appropriate. And like you say, the whole stranger danger thing. I think the younger the student, the more important that is. It starts with password protection. You don't give out your password. It's almost like you don't give out your phone number and your address. I saw a student that had taken a picture of her driver's license and put it on Instagram. I tracked that student down and I said, we need to take that off, okay? Because you're sharing a lot about yourself. So, I'm going to wrap it up because I know you probably have a full day ahead of you of either dog walking or your days are pretty.
They're pretty busy.
Yeah. It's a rainy day. It's rainy here. Is it raining up in Maine?
It's beautiful and sunny here right now.
Oh, lucky.
But one of the things I want to add to the digital footprint conversation, I think that's probably a better, rather than saying be a good digital citizen, I just say manage your digital footprint, be aware of your digital footprint. And one of the things that I've started using with high school students, or mentioning to high school students and college students, because college students are some of the worst. I have some of my former high school students who are now in college, and I'll see them on Instagram or I'll see them on Facebook and stuff like that, and I'll be like, oh my goodness, you can't post that. And I'll actually say that to them. I'm like, you can't post that. But one of the things I've started saying to them is, think about what you want your potential blind date to know about you before you go on the date.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah, that'll make them think twice.
There are no blind dates anymore.
Oh, I know. It's just a Google search, and there you go. We had that conversation last night. One of my former students is now a Google employee, and he came and did a workshop, and we were talking about that tiny little, it's not really a generation, but this topic has exploded and it's becoming really hot, and we're focusing on middle school and high school students, but the current college students have almost been left out of this important conversation in this education. So now it's like the 22 to 25-year-olds who really need to hear these messages the most, because they're the ones that are applying for jobs right now. And if an employer, one of my cousins works at a really exclusive pharmaceutical company, and it's their practice to slide the laptop over to the applicant and say, please log into your Facebook. And whether you're private or not, you may be in that situation someday. So that generation, like you're talking about, is I don't want them to learn the hard way, so we almost need to have a MOOC. I think Alec Kuros's MOOC would be good for the college students that are interested in digital tattoos. Really, you can't take those marks away. My last question for you is, and you're the guru on this, I bookmark pretty much every post that you publish. It's such a huge variety of topics. But in terms of technology integration, and I've read a lot about the SAMR model and making the leap from the substitution to the augmentation. If you're utilizing Google Drive and you're substituting a lot of traditional tasks with technology, what would be your recommendation to move to that next step, that next level? And are there any? I'm all about practicality. I'm about make it and take it. Give me a tool that is intuitive that I can use tomorrow. If I have to spend a lot of time figuring it out and watching multiple tutorials, I don't want to use it. And I want my students to create as much as possible. So, and I think a lot of educators feel the same way. They want to teach the content. They don't want to spend time on technology. But if we want to move to that next level, what are some guidelines, recommendations, and tips you have?
Yeah, and I subscribe to that same philosophy of I want it to be quick and effective. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it. That said, there is a time and a place for taking the time to learn something that's a little bit more complex, because there's a lot more opportunity in that more complex tool. I think of the Android App Inventor, for example. It's one of my favorite tools. You're not going to figure it out in a day. You might figure it out in a day if you had all day to work with it. Your students are not going to be up and running and making an absolutely awesome app the first time they try it. However, there is a ton of opportunity once they understand how that tool works, and once you understand the programming language behind it. There's just a ton of things you can do with it in terms of augmenting what you're doing in the classroom. I think of a school in New Hampshire that developed an Android app using the App Inventor to help students identify the allergens in common high school lunches. So a student can say, I'm allergic to hazelnuts. Type in hazelnut and see what might be in the school cafeteria that could kill them.
That's helpful.
It's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Or taking that same idea and applying it to create your own review activity, your own review apps. There are so many apps for review games, and a lot of them are garbage. But having one that's custom made for your school, your setting, things like that, that really go and that's something we couldn't do in the past. We couldn't. We look at Google Drive and we're like, oh, Google Drive is great. It's slick. It's fantastic, and it is, because it does free up a lot of time for us to do the more fun things. And I think that's something that often gets overlooked when we talk about the SAR model. It's like, well, we're just substituting. Well, we're substituting, but we're also saving time to get into the other things we really want to do. But still, Google Drive is really just kind of substituting Microsoft Word, or substituting passing in the paper, literally paper.
Right.
But the things like the Android App Inventor, the things that you can do now with augmented reality to develop your own augmented reality layers of information, so you can create some kind of public service for your school or for your community, so that people can also get I think of Erasmus, so that people can also get the same information you've created on their devices, and they can walk around town and find out what's going on. Or History Pin is one of my favorite apps as a social studies teacher, where I can hold up my phone in downtown Portland, Maine, and say, I'm standing here at this intersection. What did it look like 50 years ago or 100 years ago? And I can look at the historical imagery overlaid on top of the place I'm standing right now. Things like that we can do with technology that we couldn't do 10 years ago or even 5 years ago in some cases. Those are the things that I think we really need to look at, is thinking about what can we do now that we could never do 5 years ago, we could never do even 2 years ago.
Right. I think with summer coming up too, it's like you said, it's the perfect time to start tinkering, and I'm looking forward to some self-guided PD to just roll my sleeves up and start. App Inventor was on my list. I exposed a couple students of mine to that, and I think within 10 minutes they're like, oh, here's the cover image of the app.
Yeah.
They were able to figure it out. So I'd love to play around with that. And Erasmus, huge fan of that. I discovered that. I don't even know how, but we created an augmented reality experience with our art show. We did it at our, it was really cool, so you could hold up your phone, and the artist who created the work explained the techniques that they used, and it was really, really neat. And to see the students' faces light up, I said, guys, check this out. Sometimes it takes a lot to impress students because they're so used to this stuff, but they were like, that's amazing. Oh, how did that happen? And so that's what inspires me when I see students get excited about exploring and just, entering that flow stage where they just lose track of time. I love it when students say, the class is already over?
Yeah.
You've done a good lesson when you
Right.
hear that, It's not every day you hear that, but I love it when that happens. Or when you say, okay, it's time to blog, and then you can hear a pin drop because they're all just totally into the zone of blogging, I call it. So let's get in the blog zone and see what we can do. So,
cool.
Well, thank you. This has been an awesome conversation, and I wanted my help desk students to meet you and chat with you. They're all in class right now. A lot of them are coming off AP exams, so they've had quite an exhausting week mentally and emotionally. But we'll probably reach out to you again in the fall.
Excellent.
To talk, and I will continue to benefit from your blog, as I'm sure. And I love the worms in the fridge too.
Oh, thanks.
I like. You do tell a good story about that. I read the post this morning about moving. You know,
oh, yeah.
And if you've been complaining about moving, that's why nobody helps you anymore. Thanks for the advice, and thanks for chatting with me again. And have an awesome weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Okay, you too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.